And we are rolling on November 17th, at UCLA, where it's a beautiful day. The sunshine is shining. And we're about to hear in this era of Donald Trump a debate on the question this House believes that fracking should be banned. Speaking for the affirmative, Anne, and on the negative, Megan.
Okay. My name is Anne, and I'm here to speak on the affirmative that this House would ban fracking. This proposition is to be presented as a policy case in the affirmative. So for the sake of time, we're going to go ahead and skip definitions and go straight into what is the problem. The problem is that promoting fracking hinders our efforts of moving forward toward renewable energy and environmentally safe practices. According to The Nation, published August 2016, fracking emits massive amounts of methane, a heat-trapping gas at least 86 times stronger than carbon dioxide over a period of 20 years. In addition, the New York Times reported in July 2016 that growing worries about methane, which often leaks when natural gas is produced and transported, have led many scientists and activists to call natural gas the bridge to nowhere. Now, with these two statements, we see that fracking is doing much more harm than good for our environment, and we need to stop fracking in order to solve this issue. We also see that there's a problem with the byproducts of fracking as well, such as contaminated water. In a report published to Environmental Science and Technology in 2016, former EPA scientist Dominic C. DiHulio and his colleague Robert B. Jackson published findings from the Pavilion study that reveal that not only did fracking operations pose an above and below ground risk to drinking water, they strongly affected both. The report also reveals that current fracking in the region can impact and has affected underground sources of drinking water. So let's go and see how big is the problem. Last month, government scientists warned that 7.9 million people are now at risk of earthquakes triggered primarily by the disposal of wastewater as part of oil and gas drilling, according to CNN Money in March 2016. This wastewater is created when we frack, and when we frack, we put pressure into the ground in order to inject and push natural gas up. And as a result, along with the natural gas comes wastewater, and the problem is we don't know what to do with this wastewater. According to the Annual Review of Environment and Resources, oil and gas operations in the U.S. alone generate more than 2 billion gallons of wastewater per day. And what we do with this wastewater is that we inject them into deep underground disposal sites within the U.S. So why do we have this problem? Although injection was once a reasonably safe and cost-effective measure, this is no longer the case as some underground wells are beginning to become oversaturated, causing serious risks. For years, fracking companies have injected wastewater into disposal wells deep into the Arbuckle Formation, a sandstone layer that underlines Oklahoma and southern Kansas. But so much wastewater has been injected into it that it has overloaded the formation, changing the underground pressure and triggering earthquakes along what had been inactive stable faults millions of years old, reports Jeremy Boak, director of the Oklahoma Geological Survey. For about 100 years, there had been only 2 earthquakes that were close to a magnitude of 5.0 in Oklahoma, said George Choi, a geophysicist with the U.S. Geological Survey. Yet after fracking occurred within Oklahoma, during the past 5 years, there have been at least 4 5.0 or greater earthquakes, including one as recent as October 30th, 2016. So what is the solution to these man-made earthquakes, methane hazards, and overproduction of wastewater? The solution is a national ban on fracking. Climate change is a global issue. Shifting to green energy is a national issue, and climate change, or the effects of climate change, is not simply felt within state borders. So we need to tackle this issue as a federal issue because it's an issue that affects everyone within the nation. So next we need to see, will the solution work? According to a March 2016 Gallup poll, they found that a majority of Americans oppose fracking. So when we have the American support, we can see that it will work. Now I know that there can come an argument where we can say that some states may be affected by fracking more than other states. So I want to bring to you the case of Denton, Texas. Now Denton is a city in Texas that all their citizens actually brought forward a proposition to ban fracking within their city because they saw extreme health hazards to their citizens. So the city that banned fracking, and this has actually caught a phenomenon throughout the state, and Texas has still been able to thrive even though many other cities have banned fracking. So if we see that a state that really relies heavily on natural gas is still able to survive, we can see that the same can be implemented throughout states throughout America. Next, moving on to the advantages of my proposal. Having a national ban on fracking will solve where regulation has failed. Many of the hydraulic fracturing chemicals are toxic and carcinogenic, yet they are industry trade secrets. In the U.S., such secrecy has been backed by the 2005 Halliburton loophole, which exempts hydraulic fracturing from many of the nation's major federal environmental protection laws, including the Safe Water Drinking Act. A federal ban is pretty clear. We don't want any type of fracking. In the past, we've tried to deal with it by passing regulation to make it safer, to make it cleaner, but we see that corporations are still weaving and dodging through these loopholes and continue these unsafe practices on our nation's land. Next, we need to see that a great advantage to this proposal is that it will rescue the health of American families. To fully protect our drinking water and the health of our families, we need to ban this practice altogether and transition to 100% clean energy, says Rachel Richardson, the director of the Stop Drilling Program of Environment America. So, on balance, which outweighs? So we see that a national ban on fracking is the best solution to prevent further damage to families in the environment by hydraulic fracking. We'll stop the methane leaks, we'll stop the man-made earthquakes, and we'll also be able to solve and take a step towards clean energy together. I'm now open for cross-examination and points of clarification.
Excellent. Thank you. Stand close together, please.
Okay, so you said that
Don't look at her, look at me. I'm the king.
So that fracking hinders efforts toward renewable energy. How does this as a separate thing affect efforts toward renewable energy?
Okay, so with fracking, it kind of further emphasizes our dependency on natural gas. And what we see is that natural gas, as I stated in my first point, that it actually causes more harm to the environment than good. So we should instead invest our money into more clean energy sources.
Okay. And concerning the earthquakes, what have been the effects? Has there been any injuries or like issues with building infrastructure as a result of the earthquakes that you know of?
Yeah, so in Oklahoma, for instance, so the case of Oklahoma is that these faults used to be inactive, so they definitely were not prepared to have all these earthquakes occurring on that land. So there was significant building infrastructure failures, and we see that this is also common in other states as well, where they live in states that never had earthquake problems. It's not California. They don't build infrastructure for these. So when these occurrences happen, buildings collapse, and there are health of families at risk as well.
You have a two minutes left. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Could you clarify exactly how injected water is causing the earthquakes? How the saturation would cause earthquakes?
Okay, so I must admit I'm not a scientist, but I did do a week of research on it. So what happens is that with the wastewater, they have to inject it deep below because it is contaminated wastewater. And so what happens is if you add too much pressure into a closed space, it'll cause it to oversaturate and overflow, which then causes irregular movements within the tectonic plates, which causes these earthquakes, to my understanding.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Maggie, I didn't get your brief. Do you have
I was right behind you, actually.
It's behind. Oh. She had eyes in the back of my head. Yeah. Good. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, that was Megan. Yes. Doing her cross X. Okay. Well, the chair will now recognize, of course, Megan.
So, this proposition is to be presented in the negative that this House believes hydraulic fracturing should be banned. So, the process of hydraulic fracturing is producing fractures in rock formations deep below the Earth's surface that stimulate natural gas or oil flow. So, what is the problem with hydraulic fracturing? The issue is not the process of fracking. The issue is that fracking regulations are not enforced and there is poor oversight of the operations. Fracking has been blamed for having environmental effects such as methane leakage into the atmosphere, water pollution, and using high amounts of fresh water. While these are true effects, if the fracking procedure was performed properly, under appropriate regulations with sufficient oversight, this would not be the case. According to the American Gas Association, natural gas is the cleanest of all fossil fuels and is a highly efficient form of energy. A typical fracking well produces well under 3% of its entire methane into the atmosphere, which is considered the point at which natural gas loses its climate advantage. The reason that some fracking wells produce high methane emissions is because of operational inefficiencies and poor field practices. According to a 2014 study conducted by the American Chemical Society, regions with the highest methane emissions were a result of unidentified or reckless venting containment practices. And John Rumpler from Environment America and Research Policy Group also states that it is the improperly plugged wells that leak significant amounts of methane into the atmosphere. While the issue of significant methane leakage is not a result the issue of significant methane leakage is not a result of the process of hydraulic fracturing. While small amounts of methane are released during the flaring process, it is not enough methane to counteract the environmental benefit we see from using natural gas as opposed to other fossil fuels. The high amounts of methane released into the atmosphere are a result of improperly sealed wells after the site is finished. Also, there have been many reported cases of contaminated groundwater from fracking. However, the fracking process is not to blame for the contamination, despite common misconception. Fracking produces a large amount of wastewater, which must be disposed of when the site is finished. If not transported to a water treatment site, the water is typically injected back into the fracking well, where it is further encased by protective steel pipe casing and concrete isolate to prevent the spread of polluted water to fresh water supplies. This process, when done properly, will effectively contain the wastewater. However, when the cement casing is not properly constructed, it creates potential for groundwater contamination. Scientists from Duke, Ohio State, Stanford, and the University of Rochester conducted a study on contaminated wells in Texas and Pennsylvania and found that the contamination of these cluster stems from well integrity problems such as poor casing and cementing. These results appear to rule out the possibility that methane has migrated up into the drinking aquifers because of horizontal fracturing, drilling, or hydraulic fracturing, as some people have feared. And lastly, there's the issue that hydraulic fracturing uses large amount of fresh water. According to energyfromshale.org, the average fracking job, which lasts about 6 months, uses roughly 4 million gallons of water per well. This is as much water as New York City uses every 6 minutes, and about 1.3% of the water used by the country's car washes every day. We can see that in comparison, the amount of water used by a fracking site is not as significant as it sounds, especially considering the majority of fracking wastewater is now being recycled for other sites. According to energyfromshale.org, more than 90% of flowback fluid is being reused in the Marcellus region of Pennsylvania. And in Texas, requests for permits rose from less than 2 in a year in 2011 to 30 approved applications in 2012. And we are also seeing new advancements in finding alternatives to water for the fracking process. There's talk of using other substances such as carbon dioxide or nitrogen to carry out the fracking process. GE even announced that at the beginning of 2014 that it would allocate an additional $10 billion through 2020 to its Eco-Imagination budget, which will go towards investing in methods of waterless fracking. So how big is the problem? The issue of poor hydraulic fracturing oversight and practices is very widespread among the industry. According to a 2015 report from Environment America Research and Policy Center, all types of fracking companies, from large to small, are violating are prone to violating rules intended to protect human health and environment. For example, according to Environment America, fracking operators in Pennsylvania have committed thousands of violations of oil and gas regulations since 2011. So why do we have the problem? Well, regulations vary from state to state and are not always clearly defined or strict enough to account for environmental effects. For example, according to Scientific American, regulations for the disposal of fracking waste vary from state to state. In some cases, like Texas, regulation is virtually non-existent. An article published in 2014 by North Carolina news source Ucla states, the draft rules on fracking in North Carolina are rife with loopholes that favor the drillers and could endanger the public health and environment. We can see in only a few examples that the reason surrounding the issue of poor practices is that some regulations are too vague, leaving room for loopholes, and there is virtually no oversight to ensure that these practices are being properly carried out. So what is the solution? Rather than banning hydraulic fracturing altogether, strong regulation and robust monitoring systems must be put in place and best practice strictly enforced. Stricter and clearly defined regulations must be put in place to eliminate ambiguity in fracking practices. In addition, an expert on fracking procedures should be assigned to every drilling site during the most critical stages of the fracking process to ensure that the companies are strictly adhering to guidelines and following proper waste management and plugging practices. Will the solution work? By enforcing strict regulations, we will undoubtedly see the significant economic and climate advantages hydraulic fracturing yields. So what are the advantages of the solution to not banning fracking altogether? As a result of the fracking industry, the U.S. is almost completely energy self-sufficient, and the International Energy Agency projects that we will be completely energy independent by 2035. Hydraulic fracturing produces an excellent economic benefits in the energy industry and for the U.S. economy as it creates higher-paying jobs and reduces the cost of natural gas. On balances, despite the fact that...
That's time, so just one more sentence.
Yes. On balances, despite the fact that natural gas does produce emissions, renewable energy is not yet economically viable or consistent enough to be used for wide-scale energy consumption. Considering the economic advantages as well as the climate advantages in comparison to other fossil fuels, my solution of strict regulation and oversight of fracking processes is optimal.
Thank you. I now stand
Open for cross-examination and clarification.
Well, remember not to wear white when you're being filmed.
I wore black pants to offset it.
Okay. So how long and how much money would it take for us to improve fracking regulation?
I couldn't say. I would guess in the area of like 5 years, but I'm not an expert on how government procedures are carried out.
Okay, so in your speech you talk about a weakness of fracking is that there's a lot of inconsistencies regarding regulation from state to state. So do you think that fracking should be handled on a state level or a federal level?
I think it should be handled on the federal level. I mean, I know that there have to be different regulations because of geological differences among the U.S., but there should definitely be U.S.-wide mandates for how fracking is regulated.
Okay. And then in your speech as well, you kind of glossed over the health concerns and the environmental concerns with fracking. How would you address these health concerns head on?
Well, like I said, the issue stems from, because the process of hydraulic fracturing is, if it's carried out correctly, is completely safe. And the issue is that the issues that result from current practices are, the fact that there's no oversight. So if they are to be carried out properly with good regulation and oversight, then these issues would not exist.
Okay, so there seems to be a very clear divide between safe fracking hydraulic practices and unregulated hydraulic practices, but isn't it more common that we hear and we see on the news unregulated fracking practices being completed?
This is true, and that's why I propose that we should use stricter regulations and more oversight in the sites.
So what do we do in the 5 years that it takes for us to work on regulation? How do we counter it right away so that we stop having these families hurt by the health hazards?
It's all dependent upon the government and, you know, what they would see as a priority to take care of first. So I would say.
And then also, so you talk about natural gas or fracking being an advantage or having climate advantages. What would be the climate advantages be?
Well, in comparison to other fossil fuels, it is the cleanest, and because renewable energy sources are not economically viable at this point, and they are not you can't use them for wide scale practices because, you know, the wind doesn't blow all the time, and the sun isn't always shining, so we can't use this for wide scale. So right now, natural gas is our most environmentally friendly option at this point.
You have about 10 seconds if you want to slip in one more. Your time's up.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you, Megan and Ms. Nguyen. What's your first name? Anne. Okay, sorry. Thank you, Anne. And now it's time for the 4 steps of refutation. First, from the affirmative. You'll recall the 4 steps are: she said, I disagree, because, therefore. Done repeatedly.
Right. So once again, I'm Ann Nguyen, speaking on the affirmative.
Hi, Ann.
That this House would ban fracking. So first, Megan says that we need to work on regulation, and that regulation currently is not enforced. But I disagree, because we've seen that fracking has been around the U.S. for about 10 to 20 years, and if regulation has not been successful, then we need to see that an outright ban would be the most successful and efficient way. She also states that natural gas is actually a step in the right direction, but as I stated before in a piece of evidence I cited, fracking actually emits massive amounts of methane, a heat-trapping gas at least 86 times stronger than carbon dioxide over a period of 20 years. And that's once again from The Nation, published August 2016. So therefore we see that regulation has continued to fail us, and we can't rely on regulation again. Instead, what we need to do is provide a clear, concise plan, which is a federal ban on fracking. Next, she also states that natural gas is equal to clean energy. But let me go ahead and repeat another piece of evidence from the New York Times of July 2016. In the United States, 70% of Americans say that climate change is real. Hundreds of thousands of people have come together for climate marches. Oh, that was the wrong one. Growing worries about methane, which often leak when natural gas is produced and transported, have led many scientists and activists to call natural gas the bridge to nowhere. Basically what it does is it further deepens our dependency on gas instead of moving towards clean energy. And that's what we really need to be doing. Instead of investing in fracking and investing what she promises as 5 years and countless money towards regulating fracking. Therefore, we should instead ban fracking so that we don't have to wait 5 years to feel the effects of this, and we can enjoy the effects of working towards climate change, against climate change now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we also see that Megan says that methane isn't that bad, that the amount of methane that we produce isn't that significant that it would affect climate change. I disagree, because large amounts of methane being released into the environment is indeed very bad. Climate change is very bad, and I'd like to believe that most of Americans think so, at least not our current EPA director and our president-elect, but I'd like to think that most of the people in this room understand that climate change is a real issue, and we need to be addressing it on all ends. Therefore, we should ban fracking so that we can address climate change head on.
Good.
Next, Megan also, during cross-examination, I asked her how long and how much money it would take to work towards fracking regulations. She said that it would take 5 years and this would be a worthy investment, but I disagree, because, as I stated before, There are health concerns regarding fracking, and what are we going to do in those 5 years where we see earthquakes happening in places that shouldn't be happening? We see families being affected by contaminated water. What we need to do is act on this problem now. Therefore, we should ban fracking so that we can tackle this issue head on right away. And for these reasons, I continue to stand on the affirmation that this House would ban fracking, because banning fracking would solve the problem of man-made earthquakes. It will solve the health hazards associated with too much methane into the atmosphere, and it will also provide efficient plans towards working against climate change.
Thank you. Chair will now recognize Megan, leader of the opposition, for her 4 steps of repeated refutation.
Okay, so N says that fracking hinders efforts toward renewable energy, but I disagree, because fracking may continue to happen while funds can be still put into looking for cleaner sources of energy. And she also fails to acknowledge the economic benefits that result from hydraulic fracturing, which are very significant. Therefore, fracking may continue to be a thing, while there can still be efforts toward cleaner energy. And said that fracking has been going on for 10 to 20 years, and I disagree, because hydraulic practice began more than 40 years ago in Colorado, and as it became more prevalent in the past 10 to 20 years, this is when it's actually been a problem. So, therefore, hydraulic fracturing can be carried out safely, as we can see, because there was no problem with the first 20 years of the practice. And says that massive amounts of methane are being produced, and it's much worse compared to CO2. But natural gas, in comparison to coal emissions, for example, is much cleaner. Even with the fact that fracking does produce some methane into the atmosphere, it's nothing in comparison to the emissions from coal. So therefore, methane is obviously a very strong greenhouse gas, but it is still better than other forms of fossil fuels. And says that I said that that fracking was equal to clean energy. I disagree, because I did not say that whatsoever. Therefore, I don't believe fracking is equal to clean energy. And lastly, Anne said that I said that methane was not that bad. I disagree, because I do think that methane is bad. I think that as of right now, with the issue of not having a sustainable renewable energy source, natural gas is the best alternative. Therefore, fracking is the best and most economical option at this point. Thank you.
Okay. That was 241. Okay, it's now time for you to do your job individually. Assign points on a scale of 100, 70 to 80 is the norm. Don't forget to assign and sign your name and fill out a decision at the bottom. Does anybody know Lilia? Pass them to the right, please. Jared, could you assist me in... Thank you so much. Thank you. How about a pen?
This is a sheet. Oh, I didn't get it.
I'm on drugs.
24 people. There's only like 22 people.
Yes, thank you. On a decision of 11 to 5, the decision goes to the affirmative, or the government, that we should ban fracking. Pierre, tell us how you voted quickly.
I voted in the affirmative. It was actually kind of a difficult decision. You guys
Come to you at the end.
both did really well. I was hoping you weren't going to provide a solution so I could make an easy decision, but then you did, which was annoying. And I had to think about it for a little bit. But
Yeah.
Your refutation was really great, and I think you did a pretty good job at discrediting her, so therefore I went that way.
I'm Monique.
Hi, Monique.
I voted in the affirmative, mainly because I felt like you explained your solution better. You took a little longer to get there, and also I thought your cross-examination was super effective.
My name's Anthony, and
Hi, Anthony.
I voted for the affirmative because I thought her arguments were really concise and very powerful. And I liked how she brought up like how earthquakes shouldn't happen in places that aren't happening. And I thought that really convinced me to show that shows that fracking is not really good for the environment.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Alberto.
Hi, Alberto.
This was a really difficult one. I had to scratch the whole. Anyways, I voted for the affirmative. Both of you guys had some good arguments. Megan, I thought you offered some policies and you placed the blame on the regulations or the lack thereof, which was really good. But I just think that Anne's refutation and cross-examination was far better and won me over.
It's funny how that can be decisive. It's the same in courtrooms.
My name is Nayeli, and I
Hi, Nayeli.
in the affirmative. I thought that Anne's evidence was very clear, and I like how she stated that banning fracking would solve the problem and have more efficiency plans for climate change. So that's why I went with you, because I liked your evidence and your cross-examination.
Roshan.
I thought that both of you guys was awesome. I would like totally marry both of you guys. I'm just kidding. But in the end, I voted.
A bigamist.
In the end, I voted for Megan because like you really like persuaded me, and I like how like you continue to keep supporting yourself, and I like how you still have responses for refutations, that answers that you didn't even know you still had that strength. Like I need your boss.
Yeah? Second row, please.
Hi, my name is Kelsey.
Hi, Kelsey.
I went with the affirmative. I thought she had a really good structure on her, and she followed it well. She provided good evidence. She really utilized the cross-examination, and I thought she had really good questions that she came up with. And then I also thought Megan had really good answers. She also had good reputation, and that's why I went.
Thank you, Kelsey.
Hi, my name is John.
Hi,
I voted
John.
For Megan, the negative. I felt like her argument was like pretty much nearly perfectly prepared to tackle Anne's argument, but it was really close because Anne really took advantage of the cross-examination and the refutation, and your presentation wasn't the best. It was really close.
Yeah. As Pierre. I didn't even see him leave. As Pierre, who was there, pointed out, when Megan presented this counter plan of let's just have some really hard and tight and tough regulations federally, and had some evidence that said federal regulations would clean this up and make fracking safe, and we could have all the benefits to fracking. It made for a tough debate, as inept as it was presented. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Sam.
Hi, Sam.
So again, this was very close for me as well. You guys both did a good job. I agree. I think Anne's reputation is what put her over for me. And then in the same idea of what you're saying is when Anne put in there specifically that we've tried this, and she kind of hit that point where she said, yes, it did work, but now it's not. I think that set up a lot of the argument for her that was against Megan. So that was, for me, the reason that I chose.
Okay, yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Corey.
Hi, Corey.
I voted in the affirmative for Anne. While I like both their arguments and evidence, I felt Anne was a little bit better prepared and a little bit more knowledgeable. And to me, that won me over.
So just basic credibility, huh? Yeah. Yes, please.
I am Young. I voted for.
Hi, Young.
Hi. I voted for the affirmative. Although I think that Megan had great reputation about how not practical banning fracking is. I felt like if she had more evidence in her brief and talked more on that side instead of on the environmental side, which is like a better side for Anne to argue on, I might have voted for her, but I just ended up voting for the affirmative.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you for moving. Yeah.
My name's Josh. And
Hi, Josh.
And I voted for the negative. I actually disagree. I thought her refutation was way better because it attacked other sources of energy like coal. It refuted the claims that you could focus on energy conservation and this as well.
Yeah.
And she also discredited claims that she claims not say, which weakened the opponent's refutation.
Good point. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Owen.
I quoted you, Pierre. You missed it.
I voted for Anne because I felt like her reputation was great and her opening statement was good too.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Moses.
Hi, Moses.
Affirmative.
How'd you vote?
I voted for affirmative.
Yeah.
For me, it was Anne's voice, more gestures overall, like the way she presented her argument, gave me like. So like when I look at like the evidences and the data Staples provided, it was really hard to make a decision. But because the way she like presented herself was really more confident, it sounded more sounding to me.
Thank you so much. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Laura. And
Hi, Laura.
Hi, Professor. I voted for Megan, although I agree with what Anne was saying. I thought Megan was one of the best ones who has gone in the negative and has had an actual argument.
Yeah.
And I really like what she said in the whatever you said, and she just really had good points. And
Yeah.
I haven't voted for a negative yet because I wasn't really persuaded in previous classes, but this
Oh,
time
great.
she did a good
Great.
job.
That's a breakthrough. Cool. Thanks for sharing. Yes, please, sir.
My name is Caden.
Hi, Caden.
I voted in the affirmative as well. I thought they both did really well, but I felt she was more confident in the refutation and cross-examination.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Did I miss anyone? Yes. Let's hear from our TAs. Joe, you want to go first?
Sure.
So overall, I thought it was a good debate. I did end up voting for the affirmative, mostly because at the point where you both concede that these harms are happening and you say regulations and Anne says, we've tried that, it's not working, ban definitely works. I think that she wins on solving those harms. I think a point for improvement on the negative, I thought you had a good strategy, but I think it could have been more persuasive if you told us, like, what happens if fracking is banned? So, like, does that mean we increase coal production? Does that mean that we increase drilling or importing from, like, other countries that maybe aren't so friendly to the United States? So that would have made it a lot of disadvantages, even if she is solving some sort of climate or, like, earthquakes or water harms.
Yeah, you know, if you prove that wind and solar are not ready for prime time, we're in a pickle without natural gas. And what do we do in the transitional period with her policy of ban natural gas as a transitional fuel? Yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah, so interesting case. Disagree with Joe for the first time, I think, in these debates. I voted opposition, but I awarded a low point win to Anne, meaning that I gave her more speaker points. So going off of what Joe just said, I actually did hear you say something about it's not always sunny, so like solar's not going to work out. And then in refutation, you did mention the economy, and I had a little note that said, tell us what that means specifically, though. So yeah, it's going to hurt our economy, but like how bad? Because the reality is really bad. So if you would have hit that more, I think you could have convinced more people to go over your side. And I thought it was awesome. I don't think you were expecting her plan, and so when in cross, you kind of like had her define it a little bit more, and then I think in refutation, you just did an awesome job of rebuilding your case, and that's why I gave you a little bit point win. But overall, really good debate.
Yeah. Let me make just one more comment. I think that when you are faced with a counter plan like this, you need to really address it and do some comparison shopping at the end of in your refutation as to what you get with each side. And what you want to point out is you get immediate solvency. With hers, you may get something in 5 years, maybe. And in the absence of any disadvantages, in the presence of your proven disadvantages of all the harms of earthquakes and stuff, you should have had an easier win. I want to say just to Megan that did you come across all the studies or stuff that have disproven the link to the earthquakes in Oklahoma and Colorado? Yeah, there's some new studies that decoupled the fracking to the earthquakes. So
I came across some that said that the water contamination wasn't a thing, but there were just so many that I couldn't really believe that, but I didn't see them.
Let's give them another round of applause. Okay, let's hear from Corey and Young. And may I see the list, please, for this weekend? Where is it? What?
Is it all?
Okay. Okay. Who made this list? Okay, for let's see. Okay, what? This is fucked up because they don't say the day and they don't say if they need transportation or they have a car. So I'm going to do this right now.
Okay, and Anne wants to what day?
Okay.
Saturday.
Yeah,
Anne can do